Lawyers, what's a case you regretted winning? Family law is a little different in that you never really win, per se. You may get more favorable rulings or better terms, but unless the opposing party did something illegal or mind-bogglingly stupid, it's never a decisive win, really. Although I did have a case where my client fought really hard for the dog, and then ended up turning him over to a shelter. Fucking a-hole. The ex-wife received an anonymous tip and was able to get him back quickly. Did a divorce where the husband, who I was representing, wanted to trade custody of his children for a set of bedroom furniture. The bedroom furniture was not even like a family heirloom. It was furniture that you could probably get at a Rooms to Go or something. Yes, I did win that particular point, but it did not fill me with any joy. Ugh, still makes me ill. That's why I got out of family law. I do juvenile work, criminal law and family law. I represented this client first when he was a juvenile charged with disorderly conduct at school and fighting, then when he became an adult it was for simple things like possession of marijuana. As he got older, it became easier and easier to figure out what part of his life hasn't gone as well as it could, and I tried to counsel him and push him to better himself. On the night of his 21st birthday, he was charged with a DWI. Of course I'll take care of that too. About 6 months later, we are due in court for trial, on a Monday, and he doesn't show up, which at this point in his life is highly unusual. As I'm trying to figure out where he is, the court starts going over arraignment's first appearances, and then lo and behold 3 people are up for murder charges. The prosecution starts to tell the judge what the facts circumstances of the case are and mentions a few victims' names. Apparently, my client was at a party when these 3 individuals decided to allegedly do a drive-by shooting. My client suffered multiple gunshot wounds and didn't make it to the hospital. So, by default, as you can't prosecute a dead person, the state has to take a dismissal. I guess technically a win. Either way, it was crushing to me as I thought he had really turned his life around. He had prosecuted a murder case. 21-year-old kid starts dating an older guy's ex-girlfriend. The older guy, Rio Roughneck, loose connections with a local biker gang, was going all over his small town talking about how he was going to kick the kid's ass. The older guy sends some nudes of the ex while he's getting drunk at a bar, so the kid says something smart ass in response. Older guy comes to the kid's house to fight him. The kid shoots him once, and the older guy dies. Jury didn't by self-defense or castle doctrine. Convicted of voluntary manslaughter. 20 years. Burned up his appeals with no luck. I have a son about the kid's age. I could totally imagine him doing the exact same things if he were in a similar situation. Shit's going to haunt me until I die. No doubt about it. Started thinking about other work the moment the verdict came back. Wow. The guy threatened the kid, came into his house uninvited, drunk, for the purpose of causing him bodily harm, and the kid was convicted of manslaughter? That's insane. There must be some important details that we're missing here. Insane, but it happened. And yes, there are some details left out, but that's pretty much the guts of the case. Women wanted her daughter custody. We used the state preference about custody going to the mother, judge bias, her improved economical situation, and some minor garbage like her grades and discipline problems at school to discredit the dad. Not even a month after we won, the mother calls and says she had a problem. Then she explains the problem was that her boyfriend raped her daughter, and after that she had the gall to ask we pick up his defense. One of the things that made me quit to gov work. That poor girl. Her mother has totally failed her. Was representing the government at a social benefits tribunal. The applicant was an autistic man who was struggling to make ends meet but was trying his absolute best to contribute everything he could to society. He had a job where his manager was very accommodating and he was a very sympathetic person. He just wanted the extra cash to make his life a little easier for himself. Sadly, he didn't qualify for the benefit, but I think he deserved it. My closing argument was that no matter how much we empathized with this man, no matter how deserving we thought he was, he simply didn't qualify and the tribunal had to apply the law. He was unsuccessful, and when I left the building to head back to my office, he was just sitting outside on the curb crying. That image has stuck with me for a few years. Pretty heartbreaking. There was a case that I saw that involved a claim with fee shifting, meaning that if the plaintiff won, their attorney's fees would get paid by the defendant. Defendant pushed an aggressive legal position at trial that the judge agreed with, and won, avoiding a few thousand in liability to the plaintiff and a few thousand in attorney's fees. So far so good. But then the plaintiff appeals all the way to the state's high court, requiring a ton of briefing and time. High court agrees with plaintiff, reverses and sends back to the trial court, which now enters judgment against the defendant for a few thousand in damages against the plaintiff and tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees from the appeal. The defense lawyer probably regretted winning at first on that aggressive argument to the trial court. I can see the logic of moving a defendant's fees to the plaintiff but not the plaintiff's fees to a defendant. Doesn't that give a rich plaintiff incentive to throw money at a court case until the defendant gives up? In one of my first cases after passing the bar exam, a young man retained me on a drunk driving charge. No one was hurt, but he totaled his car. During trial, the arresting police officer testified that my client was clearly drunk at the accident scene, and that my client was loudly blaming the accident on the fucking a-hole who stole his car, crashed it, and then fled before the cops arrived. However, according to 2 other witness statements tendered into evidence, it was my client's friend, the passenger, who was screaming about the a-hole who stole the car, not my client, the driver. The cop must have confused the 2 men during his testimony. This discrepancy raised a reasonable doubt in the judge's mind, so she acquitted my client. At the time, the acquittal was somewhat unexpected for me. In my personal view, my client was clearly drunk and responsible for the accident, regardless of who was blaming the mystery a-hole to the cops. But I was happy my young client got off, no one was hurt, and lessons were learned. And I was quite euphoric to have won my first criminal case. The regret? About a month after the acquittal, my young client called me at 3 a.m. from the police station saying, "It's me again. The police arrested me for drunk driving again. Can you help me?" Not only did I answer no, I instantly regretted getting the earlier acquittal. My client apparently didn't learn any lessons. That didn't end nearly as badly as I thought it would. I was expecting him to have killed somebody while drunk driving. Had this happened to me twice. Got my client out on bail only to thereafter have him up and killed. First time, he was in building supposedly selling, got chased by the police and a struggle ensued where he was shot point blank in the head. Mother told me that it was my fault that he was killed and that I was working with the DA and the police. Second time, a young man no more than 16 gets released while waiting trial on robbery. One of the conditions of release was that he maintain a curfew. That very night he breaks curfew, goes over to somebody else's house and was killed in a drug-related robbery. Mother blamed me and said that the devil was working through me, that we were all demons. Criminal defense is a hard business. I'm a work comp attorney. Now represent injured people, but used to work on other side insurance defense. There was an applicant with a serious injury. Fell off a ladder, busted back with fusion, shoulder fucked, years of treatment. Internal issues, psych issues, really just fucked up. 50% plus permanent disability. We were 5 years in and finally getting to settlement time. If we bought out his future medical, settlement pretty far into 6 figures. This guy was the sole provider for wife and 2 kids. Then we found out he had aggressive brain cancer. Expected only couple years to live, at best. Thus, we wouldn't buy out future medical anymore. Still got permanent disability for $60K-ish. But can't give medical buyout based on 25+ year life expectancy anymore. I felt terrible for the guy and his family. Me and the adjuster tried to get insurance to agree to some sort of amount like 5-year buyout, but the bean counter said hell no. The attorney knew it wasn't me making the decision. Even though he worked on that guy's file for 5+ years, he decided to take $0 in fees. I have so much respect for that attorney turning down $10,000 plus in fees to help his client in a very shitty situation. I do family law and I represented a father who had lost most of his custody from heroin use and imprisonment as a result. He came to me saying he was clean and doing good and had his life together, and it checked out. He had been clean for almost 9 months, not counting jail time, and seemed sincere in wanting to resume a full relationship with his son. The other side fought viciously to keep him at extremely little custody and supervised at that, but we prevailed and got an order restoring fairly frequent unsupervised partial custody. Not long afterwards, only about 3 months after the case, he was back doing heroin, sold most of his furniture, and for me the most soul-crushing is that he set up a fake GoFundMe stuff for his child's cancer. His child didn't have cancer, and has never had cancer, so you know where that money was going. I withdrew my appearance at this point, so I don't know what happened afterwards, but I imagine and hope his custody was taken away. Basically, the net result of winning that case was that the poor boy had to witness his father relapse on heroin and was exploited for money. Worst case I ever won. Settled a personal injury case for a guy, and he was set to get about $5,000. He was in jail. I held the money for a couple months, and when he got out, he came by to get the money without delay. The next day, the cops came around and asked if I knew him. I explained that I did. I was told he died that night of an overdose, and the only thing found on him was my card, some drugs he had not yet used, and a needle. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.